Welcome to Dateline Tamil Nadu, and this is ETB Sivapriyan from Chennai. Today we have a very special guest to talk about Tamil Nadu politics and the April 23 Assembly polls. He is none other than Professor Ramu Manivannan, who was the former head of the Department of Politics and Public Administration at the University of Madras. He is a political commentator. He still teaches to a lot of students. Let's straight talk politics with Professor Ramu Manivannan. Thank you for coming on the show, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So let me start with Tamil Nadu has always been a welfare state. So from 1967, when the Dravidian parties overthrew the Congress and they assumed power in Tamil Nadu. So the first slogan was actually we'll give rice, free rice. From then the midday meal scheme to nutritious meal scheme, and that scheme has been replicated across the country. So Tamil Nadu has been a welfare state for a very, very long time. And that is why Tamil Nadu has progressed the way it has progressed today. Sure. But I think there is a change now. Because from those welfare measures which were actually investments into the future, now the state is also getting into a lot of DBT schemes, that is direct benefit transfers, through which money is directly credited into beneficiaries' account, and that is also becoming universal. It's not becoming targeted. So do you think everything changed from these welfare schemes? It took to consumerism kind of a thing after the DMK promised color TV in 2006. I think from then, Jayalalithaa started giving mixer grinders, table fans, and now we have come to refrigerators.
See, I think there is no single reference such as the television, offering the television to the public. Even prior to that, during Mr. M.G. Ramachandran's tenure as the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, we have had some Pongal special gifts to people. And but I would come back to say that everything is not turning directly to the assessment of what you call populism. And then when it was launched in the 1960s, 67 to be very specific, and then on to the DMK government and the AIADMK. But those were initially rights-based.
Okay.
For instance, about food subsidy, and then the right to food, which became a right to food agenda in the later years. Then about the labor rights, and then the old age pensions and old age homes, and then tricycle rickshaws to people. So they were part of the social and economic background the ruling class represented. The ruling parties represented. They had a very, very specific agenda of a social, economic, and human development. And that's where Tamil Nadu's campaigns, and ever since 1960s and to this day remains relevant to the people of the state. So when you say whether it has gone to the extent of populism, and I think that is because of electoral politics is the main thing. It's not, the agenda is not any longer, I won't say any longer. Even about the women beneficiary schemes, and then the school children cycle, laptops.
Yeah, exactly. So we were actually investing in the future.
Yes, and
we were the pioneer in so many schemes.
Yes.
But now we are not able to find money for such schemes, but we are channeling most of them into such direct benefit transfers.
Think it is a depoliticization. Actually, it's a depoliticization, and then addressing to the greed and of the people. And I don't say only of the people, it's a greed of the electoral politics. And so you feed people with this, and then you bribe them, you buy their votes actually. But people also don't overvalue these gifts. They think it's a transitory things. Say if you give a damaged television, or if you give a damaged mixie or a damaged a refrigerator, it might just be. If it's not working, they're going to throw it back, not in the street, but they're going to throw it back, complaining about the distributors. So there is a it's a very high risk arena that we are getting into. like, catering to the consumerism, but there is also a scam in, like, going into this mode of distribution, because there is always a market, there is always a price cut,
Yes.
and percentage politics. So, like, it's a kind of, this is how the system is getting more and more corrupt. And we should retain ourselves to what you call a social and economic welfare, whether it's about education, health, and food, actually.
Shouldn't it be targeted also, giving only to the people who actually
Exactly.
deserve it? Because even the refrigerator, which is being talked about by
Yes.
the AIADMK now, they're going to give it to all 2.2 crore families that possess the rice ration
Right.
cards. Most of these people, at least half of them, would be able to afford or
Would already have
already be having everything.
Yeah, would
so there is
already have it.
almost, I think, 80 to 90% of the households will have refrigerators, and most of them can afford it. So, like, what's the point? So, like, at some point there has to be some kind of a targeted subsidy or targeted welfare scheme. So
No,
why
I
do
always
we
think
universalize it?
Sure. Actually, there is always, what you should universe is that you must universalize rights.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. So, but our political system and the political parties, they don't want to universalize the rights of the people.
Yeah.
And, like, whether it's a right to education and free consumer, like, right to free education. And then you have, like, half the school systems, like for education system itself, it's all run by the political parties,
Yes,
and the members of legislative assemblies and members of parliament. Their families are running the entire education system. But there, you're talking about, like, when they are controlling the education system in terms of private schooling, and government schools, like, if you bring about a good quality education and providing laptops and then following it with the many other aspects of it, but they are not concentrating on that.
Yeah,
So if you're talking about, like, access to health, so it's fine. We have very good hospital system, and accessibility is, like, improving. But, like, even still in the rural areas, and very, very basic hospital healthcare units are there. So you can upgrade that and employ people, ensure that people go to work in the rural areas. And instead of that, what we are doing is completely extending the urbanization and, like, penetrating the urbanization into the rural areas and taking away the infrastructure from there. And, like, today we can't largely, given the urbanization in Tamil Nadu, and, like, we cannot really differentiate a village and a town and a city. Actually. And, like, from Pundamalli to the next point.
Yes.
And, like, Tirumali, say, for example, if you take it. So how would you classify that?
Yes, exactly.
And so, like, are you going to say it's a village? Are you going to say it's a town?
When you take the Bangalore highway, so it's like a person who comes to Chennai after 15 years and takes the highway, so you'll see a huge difference till he reaches Bangalore.
Exactly. So, like, how are you going to address this? Like, when you say, like, good education facilities right up to Pundamalli, if you have, and after that, you don't give them anything for their education, health, and other accessibilities. But on these kind of, like, the programs, such as, like, the color TV, or, like, refrigerator, and free bus pass.
Yes,
and thing. So all this has to be qualified, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, when you say qualified, it has to be targeted as well.
Yes, exactly. What I mean by qualified is not by any other criteria, by the income, and thereby residential status, and proof of staying in that place. All these are very, very important.
Like, because of universalization of the schemes like free bus pass, and also giving the women assistance to about 1.31 crore women every month. So I think the DMK government had to postpone distribution of laptop till about the last year of their tenure. So only 20 lakh laptops have been ordered and 10 lakh have been distributed. So if they had channeled this money into that laptop scheme, a lot of youngsters would have had access to the laptop.
Yes, before going into the school examination and the higher studies. So this is where, like, the politicians...
because these laptops have created IAS officers in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, see, access to education, the technology transforms. And but on the other hand, political parties and the electoral system has certain priorities,
Yes.
which completely contradicts us, reverses the development process. I mean, if you take about women's self-help group, I've been for long advocating have a kind of evaluation time, maybe a quarterly or a kind of a biannual evaluation, how the money is being spent. And if you don't kind of follow the money that you're giving it on the name of women's self-help groups, but what it leads to is that money lending, and then various kinds of misappropriation
It gets
of the
into
fund.
some kind of cycle.
It gets into a wrong cycle actually. So Tamil Nadu has to kind of review, even if you say we have a very robust social economic model, but unless and until you follow that model, whether it's working, how effectively it's working, that's very important. I find about the government should universalize the claims over the rights.
Right. So,
And then about privileges, it must have it kind of qualifying the what you call certain kind of rigid qualification should be there.
so because why I ask this question is this competitive populism is actually going beyond the limits. Because a
Absolutely.
person like actor Vijay, who calls himself the change agent and an alternative to the Dravidian political parties, is exactly doing the same. If the DMK gives 2,000 rupees per month to women, Vijay says, I will give you 2,500 rupees.
Yeah.
And Vijay also says that I will give you 1 sovereign of gold for every woman who gets married between the ages of 18 and 25. If we take that into account, he needs about 30,000 crores. So is this getting into a cycle where even players who claim to be change agents have also to follow this, or otherwise they will never ever win the elections?
I first of all would like to say that he doesn't seem to be a change agent.
Okay.
Even if he has something to be a kind of bringing a change. And to say that he would give 1 sovereign of gold to women getting married between 18 and 25, and if he provides kind of education and employment access to them, he doesn't have to give that 1 sovereign gold actually. So I think about Vijay is no different from any party that he says he would be an alternative. And then about it is a totally the corrupt political and then distributional system of purchasing your vote. And purchasing a vote, buying your vote and bribing the voters, this thing. But I don't mean to say this for social, economic and human development programs. I want to make this very, very clear. But when you are going little further and saying that I want to give a color television, I want to give a refrigerator, I don't think this intention is about human development.
Exactly, sir. Because when you give a laptop or when you feed children who come to school, that has a completely different purpose. Because the former finance minister of Tamil Nadu says, whenever we invest, Mr. PTR Palanivel Tyagarajan, he went on record to say that whenever we invest in education, it is actually investing in future.
Absolutely. I totally agree. If you invest in the health and education, you are investing in for future. And the governments have not only a dualism and extremely hypocritical stance, and the political parties, and then they are all competing against one another to kind of to convince people and to who buys people out of this whole race.
So when we talk about welfare schemes, that's one aspect of it. But there is also another aspect that is very unique to the southern states, all southern states taken together, where there is a phenomenon called cash for votes.
Right.
I think it doesn't exist in any part of the country except here. So do you think people are also part of this? Because in the last 2021 elections, if you see, there were protests in Tamil Nadu saying that the money has reached the other state, but it hasn't reached here. Right. So it is not unique to Tamil Nadu alone. I think this is a phenomenon across the southern states, except for Kerala.
Okay. See, I like to take this with a pinch of salt, actually. When I say that, yes, it does exist, the cash for votes. And why in Tamil Nadu and why not in other northern states or something is that you have in the competition between the Dravidian parties is that you don't have the caste politics.
Okay.
Caste consolidation.
Yeah.
Like, the one entire caste groups going and voting to a political party. And then, like, one religious group going in one party.
Yeah.
So in Tamil Nadu is that the competitive nature of politics is that it has come into the monetary factor.
Yeah.
So I think they have touched a very, very basic instinct of people. And like the caste and social pride and these things did not really make a difference. Okay. Not that it's completely non-existent, but this did not make a huge difference actually. So this money, the cash for votes phenomenon has slowly and steadily seeped into the system.
Yeah.
And it shows that the depth of corruption in the political parties.
Is only the politicians to be blamed, or the people should also take a part of the blame here?
Any corruption is two-way process.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just a one-way traffic. So it's a two-way traffic. And definitely, like, receiver or the giver is thing. But what happens here is that people started thinking, we are giving it for 4 years and 11 months plus 29 days we are giving. So one day we'll take it.
Yeah.
So that kind of reasoning struck people.
Not just reasoning, I think it is being normalized.
It's like, you have to reason, you have to internalize it. You have to internalize it. I think they internalize this rationale. And so this is where then the political parties capitalized on that. And like, sooner or later, political parties began to say, I mean, literally by the beginning of this decades and like, the last 20 years or something, like, we are paying you for your votes.
Yeah, exactly.
So politicians started demanding votes and insisting why you did not vote.
Yeah.
And like, punishing people for like, screening whether they voted for you or not. Because they took money from them. So like, definitely it's crossed any kind of a moral norm, dimensions of democracy and like, secrecy of the vote. And like, everybody knew which way the voting trend is going. I think this shows the depth of corruption in the political system.
So like you talked about corruption. So corruption has to be the major issue in any election in a state like Tamil Nadu, because like corruption is seeped into the society, but it hardly makes political parties hardly make any noise about corruption. Why do you think so? And what do you think people should vote on actually?
See, that's the reason why when they are ready to pay money to the voter.
Yeah.
And this is the end cycle of this corruption.
Okay.
So like, you are just silencing the person who should be questioning about the entire period of the government or the parties in power. But this is not one party alone is corrupt actually. Exactly. So we must also make this clarification that it's not just the one party alone, it's the entire system. And then like, if you keep the system means like, the bureaucracy is very corrupt in India. And like, there's no kind of a screen or a wall to say that like, we have a competent bureaucracy, no doubt about it, but the bureaucracy is as corrupt as the political system. And probably they are also the reason for because if bureaucracy resists corruption within the governance, like the very classical of relationship between the executive and the legislature and the executive, if bureaucracy can just stand by its own principles, and half the corruption is a thing. They're collaborators in the corruption system. And so like, from top to the bottom in the entire administrative and the political structure, it is mutually shared.
So like coming to the 2026 elections, so many see it as a four-cornered contest, some say it is a three-cornered contest, some say it would boil down to two parties, DMK versus the AIADMK. But how do you see this election? Which way will the wind always is already blowing? Or like, how do you see these elections altogether?
I think so far it appears to be like DMK and its allies versus the AIADMK-led NDA, like which BJP is a component in this thing, a very key component to this thing. And then, like the third factor, what you call is like, the third pole is seen as the Vijay and his TV case,
Yes.
and as a thing. But I don't see that as a third pole is a very bigger recognition.
Okay.
And like, it's a bigger recognition. You're just floating the names. And then you want the system to sit back and say, like, you are forcing people to reckon with an image, which is not real. I mean, I make it very clear, like, the one thing, you have a very clear contest between AIADMK-led NDA alliance and the DMK and its alliance here. So this is the very clear competition.
But there is also a groundswell for Vijay. I'm not only talking from the point of view of Vijay's party, which brandishes a lot of internal surveys, but whenever I go to a place or whenever we go and talk to people, there seems to be a groundswell for Vijay, especially among the youngsters and among the women. Okay. So how do you see this?
I think,
will he not make a difference this election?
See, I don't think he's going to make a huge difference in this election. If he is sensible, this election is a kind of a bridge building for his future work.
Okay.
And but where I don't see him making a big shift in terms of even the groundswell that is, like, he's typically a popular cinema star.
Okay.
I mean, like, you tell me in Tamil Nadu, in a politics, and given the history of Tamil Nadu politics, and then if you are going to send, even every political party takes with them a kind of a star campaigner. They are all from cinema field.
Yeah.
So what is the difference if a star campaigner is the leader of a party?
Leader of the party. So like when Vijayakanth came into politics, he actually emerged as a third force.
Exactly.
He actually proved that there is space for third force, and he actually altered the bipolar space for about 7 to 8 years. So don't you think Vijay is reaching there?
If he has reached, we should be seeing it now in this election. But he hasn't reached. That's the first point. And the second thing is that, like, Vijayakanth, when he came to establish former party, established one, he has for a considerable time, he spent in working for the people in the cinema, actually. Not in every place where you are, you can make a change.
Yes.
That's the precise reason that why Vijayakanth made a difference in his political life, in subsequent to political life. When he came from cinema, nobody simply said he is just an actor.
Yeah.
And he was already a kind of, he had established himself as a person who can solve problems, who can mediate, moderate conflicts within the industry. And like, seemingly a kind of a very humane person too. So those factors gave him a kind of a lead when he came into politics. And then, like, the kind of politics that he spoke also, like, about an alternative, there was a time, that certainly was a time, there was a space for a third pole or an alternative to emerge. People at large were very tired of Dravidian parties for a long time, 40 years period, and they thought there could be a change, should be fine actually. But he did bring that relief, kind of in imagination or in even in the conception of the changes thing. But he did not quite formulate his strategies well, or his alliances, or if he had a kind of he had an opportunity as a leader of emerging to be a leader of the opposition that nobody could even conceive that in such a short time, and he had kind of like he had let it go.
So like you spoke about the change and other things. Then it was 40 years, but now it's about 60 years of Dravidian rule. So do you see people are fatigued with the Dravidian parties, they want a change, so a lot of youngsters could gravitate towards Vijay or towards even Nam Tamidar Seema?
See, I think like, people's quest for change is always there in every election. And then if the alternatives happens to be from, so far we have had a very kind of like, bilateral, or what you call is like, the bipolar contest for a long time between DMK and the AIADMK. And so you could see the third pole or the fourth streams like, Nam Tamidar Katchi emerging in the political arena. But, a very significant fact is that to become an alternative, you must have an alternative.
True.
And like in ideological terms, in Tamil Nadu, all is said about Tamil Nadu politics is that Tamil Nadu politics is run by an ideological basis.
So do you mean to say that Vijay doesn't have any ideology with him? He says that he is from the Dravidian stable.
We are all from the Dravidian thing. So like, to be a kind of like, identify yourself with to belonging to the state and to identifying an ideological issues, then standing by it. Okay. You tell me by which aspect that he had established himself as a man that people could rally for the state rights or like, the problems of the people. He has not worked among the people for any significant period of time. And like, going to people through a fan club is different.
Yeah.
And going to people through a political organization is different. I think that distinction has to be very, very clear.
Okay. So like also sir, there is a lot of criticism about Vijay not getting off the bus. So like he has to getting off the bus.
Okay.
So like he travels in a bus and he talks to people only atop the bus. He has never mingled with the people. So do you think that is one basic quality of a politician, to be among the people, to gain their confidence that he will work for them?
See, actually good leaders come from the people and go climb on the bus.
Okay.
And a man who's not even stepped out of the bus, I don't see him as a leader of the people at all. Okay. Which way can he mingle with the masses? He has to come from the staircase.
True.
And we don't need leaders coming from the top to the bottom. We need leaders from the people and to go to the top.
Okay.
So I think he is completely a different kind of politician, wanting to be a politician, and it's all like, the caravan culture.
Okay. So like we talk a lot about Tamil Nadu being a social justice state. So we talk about social justice, we talk about empowerment and so on. But still at some point, at somewhere, we are stuck with caste. So the caste equations do play a major role in Tamil Nadu elections. For example, we have the Pattali Makkal Katchi in the northern Tamil Nadu who hold sway over the 1 years, and you have another dominant community across central and southern Tamil Nadu which are Mukkulathos. So how do you see these blocks voting this election? And isn't it a paradox in a state which talks about social justice that political parties have to actually concentrate or strategize their political moves according to the caste equations?
See, it is a very fluid rationale, to tell you honestly about it. Yes, there is an element of caste factor. The problem why we have the situation is that political parties are themselves the selection of candidate, and then like, identifying the voter base. It's all based on, it's not that people are looking at the caste. They are not seeing, is this person is my caste. But then the political parties are nominating candidates who belong to the majority voters in that constituency. So this is one aspect. And another aspect is that nobody asked the caste of M.G. Ramachandran.
True.
And then nobody even asked like, Madam Jayalalithaa.
It holds true for Vijay as well.
Yeah. So like, the caste factor for Jayalalithaa. And nobody even said about like for Mr. Karunanidhi. Or like, any Mr. Stalin or any leader. You name me, you name one. This is a criteria for a leader to be elected. Not at all.
Sir, on the other hand, most of the leaders who have ruled Tamil Nadu hail from a very caste that is very minority in number.
Absolutely.
Be it Jayalalithaa, be it M.G. Ramachandran,
including Mr. Kamaraj.
M.K. Stalin.
Including Mr. Kamaraj, actually. So, like, how can we say this is a very caste-oriented politics? If you take Bihar, you can say, like, in the 70 years, how many Brahmin leaders were the chief ministers and things? And if you take Uttar Pradesh, if you take Orissa, and if you take West Bengal, if you take about like even in the Communist Party and movement. So Tamil Nadu certainly stands different on this thing. And like there's no question about that. But on the other hand, political parties still manipulate these factors. And like, people's sentiments actually. Then now coming to the present situation of like, do people like, the Mukkulathur vote bank
the 1 year
and
vote
the
bank.
1 year vote bank. If 1 year vote bank is committed to the only the 1 year party, I think PMK should have at least 100 seats in the state thing. But why are they asking for 20 seats?
They've not crossed even the 6% threshold.
So why are they asking for about if the northern Tamil Nadu is minimum about 80 seats they should win.
Okay.
By going, so that means you are not even loyal to your own people, that the caste. So people are being exploited in the name of caste.
Okay.
And it's the other way. And political parties are using their emotions and sentiments to kind of see on the to draw their votes at the same time that they project themselves as a secular in the profile. But in a final analysis is that caste really doesn't matter. Okay. It matters to a certain point, and then to the level of identifying a thing. But in the Mukkulathur belt, if you're saying, if TTV Dinagaran, if you take about Madam Sashikala, if you take about O. Paneerselvam, and then you think this community was invented by Mukkulathur vote bank, was invented by any of them?
No.
They were all the large vote bank of AIADMK led by Mr. M.G. Ramachandran. And he was not belonging to any of this caste identification. So once you see a kind of a caste mobilization there, then the western districts were voting for AIADMK traditionally. It was kind of ruled and reigned by the leadership of Mr. MGR and Madam Jayalalithaa. And then you suddenly have Edappadi at the top, and people say that is a caste bank actually. So it could even be dissipated in that point itself. So it's a very fluid thing. It works according to circumstances as per the capabilities of the maneuvering agencies.
Okay. Sir, you spoke about secularism. So the DMK since 2019 has been harvesting the entire votes of the minority communities. So Muslims and Christians have been completely en masse voting for the DMK alliance. So with Vijay being a Christian himself, there is a lot of hypothesis which says that at least a Christian vote bank, a significant portion would shift from the DMK to Active Vijay's Tamizhaga Vetti Kazhagam. How do you see this?
It's an hypothesis. It's an hypothesis because the reason is that if you say that all Christians, young youth would vote for this, it will be undermining their political thinking actually. And people are not simply going to vote for Vijay because the factors like religion alone. And on the other hand, people who are not Christians, and they are not going to say that he is a Christian, we will not vote for him.
Exactly.
So Vijay has to be placed somewhere in between. And it's also important for Vijay and his political party to exploit that caste or religious sentiment of a minority communalism is as dangerous as the majority communalism. And but on the other hand, I'll say, whichever religion people belong to in terms of voting towards Vijay is that, outside the polling booth is different. Once they enter the polling booth, they have to see the community's demands, community's identity in sphere of the national politics. And the stream that the nation is going thing, and what kind of coalitions and alliances are necessary, and can Vijay make a difference to that? And if that is the factor, then Vijay is also seen as the shadow of the BJP in Tamil Nadu.
Okay. Is it so? Is it?
It's one of, you see the way that he has been handled, the CBI process.
True.
And then the way that he has obtained the election symbol without any kind of a negotiation, without any, I never know that in India that you can just get a symbol by an application.
Okay.
It's a process.
Yeah, it's
and you don't get it when you go for a CBI inquiry, when you're coming back from a Delhi. So there is a kind of there is something kind of a backroom maneuver is happening.
But it also looks like Vijay has overtly rejected the BJP's offer of joining the NDA, and now he's contesting all alone.
Yeah, see, sometimes you can be part of the alliance and then outside the alliance as well.
Okay.
And there's all a tactical factor. But I'm not saying that, he is the BJP's long hand. But suddenly he has not said anything that will be critical of the BJP, national politics or the issues concerning things. He said he is always talking about secular politics. Why has he not spoken anything in the last few months?
True.
And then, like, he has not taken responsibility for the Karur incident. And then BJP has said that, like, he has not said anything about him. And he is going back and forth for inquiry, and BJP is very silent about, like, if such a mass murder has happened in the state, and under some other circumstances, under the banner of some other political party, this would have been a national debate for the BJP in a mainstream television channel.
Sir, you spoke about the Karur stampede. So, like, but even after the Karur stampede, I think Vijay's graph has never come down, especially among the youth. So, do you think it's kind of some kind of cult image that Tamil Nadu is stuck, like every hero gets out of whatever they do?
I don't think, like, it's a cult, or, like, it's a cinema star attraction.
Okay.
I want to make this very, so cult also has certain consciousness.
Okay.
I don't see any consciousness in Vijay's politics, actually, or any agenda for the state, actually. And then when you're looking at him, like, people, he never went back to say sorry or to find out anything what happened, and he ran away from there. And then
wasn't the government also responsible for the stampede? They were responsible, and Vijay is also.
The police administration,
the
government administration, and, like, the government has to give an explanation. I think the CBI process would address all those issues, actually. But as a person at that venue that we are talking about, and if any other
people came to see him,
and if there's any other political party conducted a public meeting and such an incident has happened, the leader of the party would have been asked to explain.
True.
And it's grounded as simple as that. And then no leader can sit in a home, in a place, hotel, and ask the victims' families to come and offer their grievances or offer the story for listening. We have never heard this anywhere in the world.
So, sir, why do you think he has been given a free pass?
How?
No, like this, like you are explaining it. Why do you think he has been given a free pass?
The system's weakness, actually.
Okay.
It's a system's weakness. I personally see the Tamil Nadu government did not have the courage to put him behind the bars.
Okay.
It's very simple. And
politics has something to do with that. They didn't want Vijay to grow.
Yeah, it's a kind of, like, see, like what happens, it's a kind of we also have a negative heroes.
Yeah.
So if you arrest him, he becomes a negative hero at that time. And, like, so you don't want to do that. Okay. And the center did not want to crack it.
Okay.
And they simply said, take this to the CBI. And now he goes to stand outside the CBI office and waves hands to his fan clubs. So the state of the inquiry is that level, actually, for 41 lives. And so the state government and the center and to the basic, coming down to the base of the analysis is that, like, even he himself has not shed any kind of tears to this whole incident, actually.
So, like, coming to the end, so what do you think of the BJP's role in Tamil Nadu? So, in 2024, they went alone. Again, now they have come back to the AIADMK alliance. Chief Minister M.K. Stalin has already branded this election as one between Tamil Nadu and NDA, saying that the NDA, this alliance, if comes to power, will only be controlled by Delhi. And, like, do you think it is kind of trying to capitalize the anti-BJP sentiment? Or the BJP, how do you see the BJP's role in Tamil Nadu?
See, I think that narrative set by the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu and then the President and leader of the DMK party, it's a standard narrative for the last 60 years.
Okay.
They preserved it.
Yeah.
And they had kind of sharpened it. And in the last decade or so, it is serving the DMK's cause.
Yeah, the BJP has given them a new lease of life.
Yeah, new lease of
by raking up the language issue, by talking about federalism.
Centralization of power, and then the way majoritarianism is prevailing in the northern parts or in the other parts of the country. And then coming to the BJP's role in Tamil Nadu politics is that BJP could have gone little long distance in Tamil Nadu politics, given the fact that after 2014, Congress had a massive setback.
Yes.
And, like, there is always a space for national party. But we keep saying that Congress is a national party, Congress is a national party. So, like, if BJP had worked hard in the political sense of thing. It is, on the other hand, BJP chose first to kind of like, completely finish the Dravidian parties.
So
and then
they converted it into an ideological fight rather than a political fight.
even if there's an ideological fight, DMK wants an ideological fight. But if it's an ideological fight, you don't go and take over the party, Dravidian party on a lease.
True.
So in the process, if they had gone to work with the people or taking up the issues with the, like similar to kind of a ground political work, if they're done for 10 to 15 years now, they don't have to wait for AIADMK to give 28 seats. In 10 years, you have grown that far to take 28 seats from AIADMK.
So they're also contesting, a lot of Alliance partners are contesting on BJP's symbol as well. So the BJP's number could come between 35 to 36.
Yeah, so like, I'm simply saying BJP for the kind of national leadership, and then in the last few years, the visibility it has gained, like, it has put its bargain through the AIADMK actually. Like, it wants to ride on someone's shoulders, someone's back. So this...
like it did in Maharashtra, like in
Bihar, and then like, and at the same time, they are not seen as a reliable pillion rider as well, actually. You are climbing the back of the thing. Most likely, the person who is carrying you doesn't trust you, nor you trust the person
who is carrying you.
So this has the very, very typical, what you call, like the Panchatantra stories, actually, and the distrust, and has really kind of swallowed BJP's prospects in Tamil Nadu.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for talking to us. Let's wait for the people to decide on April 23, and we'll know the results on May 4. Thank you again. Thank you so much for
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. Thank you very much.